Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for 10,000 Candles 2020 live stream. We have a wonderful evening planned for you tonight. I'd like to start off by telling you who we are and why we created this event. Recoveredia is a media organization, and our purpose is to create meaningful human connection through digital media and events. Tonight is an example of that with our second annual 10,000 Candles Vigil. We're building community with the purpose of raising awareness that the opposite of addiction, the opposite of suicide, is connection. Tonight, you have become part of that community. Over the past 2.5 years, we have connected with many incredible individuals throughout the mental health and addiction recovery community. Tonight, you'll hear inspiring stories from several people in this community that have turned their tragedy into triumph. The people sharing with you tonight have experienced a multitude of challenges, but they all share a commonality, and that their journey to overcome adversity is grounded in service to others. They are in service to each of us by being here with us tonight. Tonight, we honor them and express our deep gratitude for their service by providing this platform where they can share a message of hope, resilience, recovery, and connection. Our first speaker this evening is a mother who lost her daughter to the opioid epidemic. And her response to that loss was one of compassion and creativity. The portraits painted by Anne-Marie Zanfagna memorialize loved ones lost to overdose and serve as a tribute to the families who have experienced this terrible tragedy. Her organization, Angels of Addictions, seeks to eliminate the stigma surrounding addiction and help separate the person from the disease. It is my honor to introduce Anne-Marie Zanfagna.
Hi, I'm Anne-Marie, and I'd like to thank everyone for viewing tonight. My daughter Jackie passed when she was 25, and I didn't know her story. I didn't know how she felt. She was a happy, beautiful, creative young woman, and then all of a sudden she's dead. What does that do? So many emotions come up in me every time I think of just how quickly life can disappear on you. But I knew that I had to be present in this grief. And in this grief, you know, I stayed and I experienced it all, from the wake to the funeral to the burial. At the wake, I would bring Jackie's friends up to see the casket, and I would tell them, this could be you. And it certainly could have been, and some of them were. But as time has passed, the rawness in me has also. We put in the obituary, first line, died from opioids, heroin, and fentanyl. And Jackie was a wonderful girl. But it was so raw to me that had to be my first line, because I wanted other people to experience the same thing. And in grief, there was a whole year where I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of the bed. I didn't go to the store. Not much happened in my life. And then I decided that it was time to come back. And one of the ways I did that was in painting. So I painted Jacqueline's picture right here, and it took me 2 months. And in that 2 months, it was wonderful time spent with her. You know, I laughed, I cried, she was with me. I brought the painting to a support group, and many other people wanted it, and it kind of snowballed from there. I painted about 300 portraits to date, and I have many more waiting. But I want to know, where is the outrage? I have always been outraged by the lack of response from other people. I would have meetings in the town. Only a dozen people would come. This town in 2014 was loaded with heroin, and people were dying left and right. And it just hurts me so much. And also, not knowing Jackie's pain. I didn't realize that she had a lot of pain she just couldn't release or didn't know how to talk about. And she was sad, then she was ashamed of herself and what went on and what she did. But, you know, as I learned, as time went on, I was blind to her situation. And this is a disease of reoccurrence. I thought once it was gone, and we went back to our life. Well, it only lasted a year, and then Jacqueline died, October 18th, 2014. And there was a lot of things I wish I could have fixed, but when someone has substance use disorder, you can't cure them, control them, and you certainly didn't cause it. And these are things that I didn't realize. I didn't realize that codependency was a big part in our lives, and the whole family was sick. I mean, it went from her sister to nephews and nieces to my parents, her grandparents. You know, it just touched everyone's life. And I'm still working on grief. Grief is with me every day. But I've turned it into something a little more positive, and I paint for other people. And I bring their child back so that they are happy and colorful and a joy, because you need to remember the joy. You know, something terrible happens in your life or in their life, and this disease comes into play. But I just feel that we need to know more. We need to look closer. Why aren't we talking to our kids, to our friends and neighbors, co-workers? You know, this is a very easy thing to ignore, because I don't think people want to take a good hard look at themselves and say, what have I been doing? But I know that if you help other people, no matter what you can do, you're going to find a little more peace, understanding. I found a lot of it when I went to Mercy Street in Plastow. That's where Angels of Addiction, I would say, started, because I got to understand how other people felt. And I learned a lot, and I listened. You know, it's so easy to move. It's so hard to move forward and so easy to stand still in your grief. So easy. But you need to be present through it so you know what happens. I didn't want to take any sedatives to calm my nerves. I had to live through it all. And that was very important. People are not invisible to me anymore. You know, when you see people sitting on benches in parks or on the road, I see them. I know who they are now. Before, I never looked. And I think that that was a big part of when Jackie died. I saw them because they were once Jackie. And I would say that this is the culmination of a lot of work. I've been doing this since 2015. But when I get stories from people that have received their portraits, they are so thrilled. That makes their day, even the day it arrives on, which I don't even think about, is special to them. Might have been a birthday, something like that. Grief today looks to me like it's never ending, and moving forward has always been important, because I need to find a purpose in my life. With Angels of Addictions, I have. And I've found new community, which has been wonderful. Mercy Street in Plastow has really made me grow, made me get out of my own head and find other people that could use some help. And there's a lot of ways that you can help people. Just listen is one of the biggest ways that I've found. And I still want to know, where is the outrage? I have been outraged for years, and why does it disappear into the background? Our pain is not going to ever leave us. It's always going to be there. And we just have to work hard, talk with one another, talk in schools. We have presentations we do all over the place so that maybe I can connect with someone, because that's what our purpose is. And connection is what keeps sobriety. It keeps, it gives you a reason to keep moving forward. And it's hard to move forward, but you have to, because you have to make a difference. And sometimes I think the gateway to addiction is mental illness and abuse. But on that note, I want to thank everybody for listening, for coming and seeing the portraits. And it reminds me of Jackie. And this is my love story to Jackie. It's beautiful. Thank you very much.
We are eternally grateful to Anne Marie and Angels of Addictions for their partnership in this event, including the powerful collection of portraits which they graciously allowed us to display throughout her talk. A mother's love is a powerful force, and that is evident in the work that Anne Marie is doing. Our next story comes from a mother who also lost her daughter to addiction. In her time of grief, Terry Stamus Everett found an outlet to honor her daughter, Sarah, and serve a population in need with love and compassion.
I will be perfectly honest, when I first learned of Sarah's addiction, I kind of kept it to the family. I let my family know what was going on, but I'm not quite sure. I thought it was just very personal and maybe something that you didn't share for, to people that you're not super close with. I also wanted to respect Sarah's privacy. I didn't want to announce anything she wasn't comfortable with. But I will have to say that even though I was having my own struggles, just trying to be her mom through this, her long journey, I only reached out to some close friends. I just wasn't sure how they would react. I'm Terry Everett. I'm Sarah Everett's mom. I created the group Anchored in Hope in her honor with Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel, Rachel Sullivan. I'm Sarah Everett's best friend, and Terry and I started Anchored in Hope together in honor of our girl, Sarah.
Our girl, Sarah. Sarah often was by herself. And I believe that if she had had more connections, she would have at least had an easier time of it. She would come and sit on this rock, and she would journal or do her mandalas with the coloring, just to kind of focus and kind of get her mind off of things.
Yeah, she was a very spiritual person. She loved to journal, meditate, color. She loved crystals. She loved learning about chakras, and she was a massage therapist. She just was the most beautiful soul. And we used to come here and just sit, and I know she would come here alone and journal and sit. But this was one of our most favorite peaceful places. Even when she was struggling the worst, she would call me up and say, hey, can you meet me at our spot? and I would come down here, and just be with her.
Yeah.
And just, tell her it was going to be okay and that we could figure it out.
She had been struggling. I knew things were going on, but just never assumed that things were as bad as they were.
Yeah.
She didn't want me to know. She didn't want to hurt me.
Yeah.
So she hid it, but the signs became so apparent as she struggled with her addiction that it couldn't be hidden anymore.
Yeah.
So the day she told me, we got her into a recovery program up in Vermont. And that became her journey of going to, unfortunately, many rehabs. I think it was too short of a process. They would take her in, and you'd get 4 weeks, and then she was expected to enter society again, and I don't think it was a long enough program. I know things have changed a little bit recently about having more opportunities. I think more connection would have been very helpful for her. I needed just something. It was like too much time on my hands or more thoughts in my mind. And I decided that I would help the homeless in her honor. So that's where Anchored in Hope was born. So that's been my biggest vehicle of my own kind of recovery from grief and my journey. Grief never ends, but Anchored in Hope has helped me with the healing process. It is just, for myself, so healing to help others. It just takes my thoughts of grief off of myself and helps me to think about others, which makes me feel happier and like I've done something meaningful. And also to honor Sarah, this is the only way I can show her now that I love her. So just to honor her, every time I talk to her afterwards, I'm like, did you see that person? We really helped them today.
The people in our community too, giving has been a huge part of it as well, because if without them we wouldn't have been able to do as much as we can.
Absolutely.
There have been so many generous donations
and
people, ordering stuff off of our Amazon wish list.
Right.
And just dropping stuff off, saying, hey, when can I drop this off? When can I drop that off? So that's been really so helpful and so amazing, and we couldn't do it without all of those people.
Absolutely. I think people need to understand that it is a disease and maybe educate themselves a little bit. And I think at the crux of it is that regardless of your stance on that, it's their fault, their choice, or it is a disease, that these are human beings that are suffering. So what does your heart tell you to do?
We're not ashamed of Sarah's struggles, and we're not ashamed of what she's been through. She was gone through some really horrible things during her time when she was actively using, but we're not ashamed.
Right.
And we're so proud of her strength. We're able to teach other people and open their eyes and show them that this could be your best friend, your sister, your daughter, your son, your brother. It's not just people that are living on the street.
Absolutely.
It can be, your closest best friend. You might not even know it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's another misconception, that it's the homeless or people living in poverty, and that's certainly not true. Sarah was brought up with fabulous morals, and she was a good girl, and she had beautiful friends and family who loved her. And I show her face sometimes and say, is this the face of addiction? I don't, it could be anybody. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl. And, so strong. So strong.
Yeah.
And what a fighter. These are lovely people, and they may be using, and they may have mental illness, and they may have other issues, but who doesn't have issues?
Yeah.
And these people are worthy of kindness and compassion. I saw your advertisements for 10,000 candles for New Hampshire last year, and we actually went to the Vigil in Manchester. I like doing different events personally just to honor my daughter, you know, to say we're thinking of you, we haven't forgotten you, we love you, we want to show this to you by attending this. I also loved your message of connection because I know isolation is a huge part of addiction. And I know that impacted Sarah quite a bit. I think if she could have had more connection with people, organizations, recovery groups, I think she would have had an easier time of it, having those connections. So that kind of rang true with me when I saw that. I liked the piece that 10,000 Candles offers hope. You can listen to all these different stories and maybe learn, or listen to these people talking about recovery and maybe learn. But also giving me a chance to grieve with other people grieving with the same thing I'm grieving with. I'm not by myself. You know, we're together in this. So I guess the togetherness piece really rang true for me. Not only togetherness for myself to be able to openly grieve with other parents, but the togetherness piece that you promote for everybody suffering from these disorders. So that's what drew me to your organization.
We would like to thank Terry, Rachel, and Sarah, and their friends and family watching tonight for their dedication to helping the less fortunate and reducing the stigma of mental illness and addiction. I'm pleased to present our first musical guest this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Decatur Creek.
Thank you. We're going to do a song here to start with by a band called the Subdues. This is called Carved in Stone. Carved in stone is the name I will remember. Skin and bones and a heart that was so tender. Carry on and have yourself a lovely ride. Think of me when you finally reach the other side. Carved in stone is the date he had to go on, and another from the moment of his first dawn. Now alone is someone who can't surrender to the darkness and sadness this life has sent her. Carry on and have yourself a lovely ride. Think of me when you finally reach the other side. Hold on tight to the things you always taught us. Speak out loud about faith, hope, love, and trust. Carry on and have yourself a lovely ride. Think of me when you finally reach the other side. Carved in stone is the name I will remember.
I want to thank you guys for having us. It's an incredible honor to be here and be part of this wonderful project.
This next song we're going to do is a song I wrote. I wrote it for my son, who was going through a hard time, and I hope you can relate to it. It's called Rain. When the rain won't stop and the sun don't shine, when your world grows cold and your thoughts won't mind, been on down that dark road too. Just keeping on to through. When the rain won't stop and the sun don't shine, when the clouds won't part and your heart's confined, wandered along this byway blue, searching for an open view. You can't speed the hands of time or make the pain say the way. Healing just takes time, measured day by day. When the rain won't stop and the sun don't shine, not a ray of hope, only twilight time. Every day the chance to do everything you never knew. I believe in you. No matter what you say or do, the whole world will too. The rest is up to you. When the rain won't stop and the sun don't shine, when your world grows cold and your thoughts won't mind, when the rain won't stop, when the rain won't stop, when the rain won't stop.
We're going to do a song that Doug wrote.
Yeah, this song has I'm going to say, themes and bits and pieces of a lot of aspects of recovery. It starts off with, it's called Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda. And for anybody who's in recovery can probably relate to that. And it goes into regrets of things we haven't done or didn't do yet, and sort of winds up trying to live in this moment. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau, make a life at sea. Now I'm banging nails and now I'm cutting wood at my farm. Well, it's smarter than me. When Chris Columbus was 23, he was half as old as he was ever gonna be. He said, I need a life, I need a girl, I need to sail around a flat world, make it round. And he did. Well, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, done so much more by now. Half a life sitting on a bench, change the world somehow, somehow. Somewhere there's an old chair on an old porch waiting for my tired old ass. I gotta accomplish something quick, for this life has gone past. Start a new day, take out the gray, buy a new car, a new guitar, and write 10,000 new songs. Join a gym, go for a swim, take a hike, ride a bike, climb Mount Everest, maybe just walk around the block. I coulda, woulda, shoulda, done so much more by now. Half a life sitting on a bench, gotta change the world somehow, somehow. My dog is just as happy as she can be. She's a furry, four-legged, stress-free version of a crazy me. She doesn't know if it's Monday or Friday, if I am black or white, or who Jesus Christ is. Knows nothing about pride and ego, fear of tomorrow. She says, hey, what's a midlife crisis? Well, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, live just 1 minute at a time. Good life is just the sum of its parts. I have not known most of mine. A good life is just the sum of its parts. I have not known most of mine. Most of mine.
Hopefully not.
Still time
Plenty.
to dance more,
I'd like that.
play more music,
Definitely.
meet more people,
Yes.
buy more flowers, This song, I was inspired to write this song by maybe a certain program of recovery that talks about a higher power, and that I understand. The song's called Namaste, and my understanding of that is that the God in you honors the God in me, whatever that may be. You know, looking for the good in each other, and no exceptions, no rules, non-judgmental. Anyway, this is called Namaste. Jesus ever walk on the water without a bottle of wine or a fishing pole? Was he hand in hand with the devil's daughter? Or hand in hand with the Holy Ghost? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John sit on the shore looking on. A man like you and I, one and the same, laughing and singing, fishing in the rain. Namaste. Namaste. God is the brave and God is the chief. God is the cop and God is the thief. God is faith and God is fear. God is the captain and the mutineer. Namaste. That's God in you, and that's God in me. It's all we could ever hope to be. It's light in the dark when you lose your way. God is straight, and God is gay. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Weren't expecting applause.
We've got one more song for you. This is called Wash Away.
This was written by a friend of ours, Chris O'Connor. Really good New Hampshire singer-songwriter. Liked the song so much, we decided to play it and record it.
We tune because we care.
Doug has more strings than any of us, so.
Yeah, they don't stay tuned either. I don't know what it is. You'd think in the year 2020 you could keep a mandolin in tune. But you can't. You can't do it.
You gotta pay a lot of extra money for that one. Hey, maybe I should try it in the right key. Sounds better there. Southern sister, once more I come to you with my heart in my hand, just as I always do, like a child. I am calling out your name, though I don't deserve your kindness, I ask it just the same. Wash away, wash away, wash away my sorrow, wash away my pain in the white light of your healing embrace. Wash away my failure, wash away my shame. Southern sister, will you open up your arms? Let me hide myself inside you from the raging of the storm. And if I beg you, will you shield me from the dawn? From one more day of living with all that I've done wrong. Wash away, wash away, wash away my sorrow, wash away my pain in the white light of your healing embrace. Wash away my failure, wash away my shame. Southern sister, you alone know who I am. Only you have seen the boy within the wounded man. So when I ask you, will you only let me stay? Please do not remind me of the love that I've betrayed. Wash away, wash away, wash away my sorrow, wash away my pain in the white light of your healing embrace. Wash away my failure, wash away my shame.
Thank you very
Wow.
much. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
What an incredible performance. Beautiful melodies. We'd really like to thank Decatur Creek for being with us tonight to balance the evening with their perfect harmony and their fabulous songwriting. The book Lost Connections by New York Times bestselling author Johann Hari became an inspiration for the messaging behind 10,000 Candles. His TED Talks have been viewed millions of times, and he popularized the phrase, the opposite of addiction, the opposite of suicide is connection. In 2019, my partner TJ and I traveled to New York to attend a conference where he was speaking. And on our way there, we made the decision that we would ask him for an interview. And when we met him and explained our intentions with 10,000 Candles, he was compelled to share the following message.
Everyone watching this knows that every human being has natural physical needs. You need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need clean air. If I took those things away from you, you'd be in real trouble real fast. But there's equally strong evidence that all human beings have natural psychological needs. You need to feel you belong. You need to feel your life has meaning and purpose. You need to feel that people see you and value you. You need to feel you've got a future that makes sense. And this culture we've built is good at lots of things, but we have been getting less and less good at meeting these deep, underlying psychological needs. And in a society where people's deepest needs to belong, to be connected, are not met, there will be a lot of despair. And that is not because there's something wrong with the individual. That's because something has gone wrong with the way we live together. That's why it's rising so much. That's why suicide is at its highest in the same places where opioid-based addiction is highest, where antidepressant prescriptions are highest, where people just feeling awful are highest. You know, the opposite of addiction, the opposite of suicide is connection. We need to reconnect with each other. A great way of starting that is to grieve for what we've lost. That's why 10,000 Candles for New Hampshire is so important. And meeting together at that point of grief can be a place where we begin to reconnect. So please support them and please begin the process of reconnecting.
Such a powerful message from Johann. And we encourage you, if you haven't done so, to take a look at his TED Talks and his books, Chasing the Scream and Lost Connections. I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Cynthia Whitaker, Interim President at Greater Nashua Mental Health. We had the pleasure of first meeting Dr. Whitaker at an opioid task force in Nashua, New Hampshire, and have since been captivated by her work serving the community of that city. She provides a powerful message of the importance of connection as it relates to community mental health, and we are grateful for her presence this evening.
Thank you, Matt. Since I was young, due to some things that I experienced, I've been an achiever. Well, maybe an overachiever. From the outside, that may have appeared to be solely a positive thing. But one consequence of this has been that I grew up being a doer. I live by to-do lists and check boxes. Anybody out there feel me? I learned the hard way that this didn't allow me to be at my best. And I've had to work each and every day to not fall back into the trap of the check boxes, to get out of the way of just going through the motions, to let go of the allure of the neatness of the check boxes and step instead into the messiness and the blessings of relationships. In my work at Greater Nashua Mental Health, as a psychologist, I've seen many other people who, just like me, lived by the checkbox. People come into treatment asking, what do I do to improve? They see a success story and ask, how do I do it just like them? What did they do? Where did they go to treatment? What kind of medication did they use? As if they could create a recipe for how to get better. While it's natural for us to think that there's a magical answer out there that maybe is the same for everyone, it's just not true. It's not true of a diet plan, it's not true of medications, and it's certainly not true of recovery. You don't find recovery on your own, in isolation, with a checkbox plan. Recovery is not found by a recipe. First, I go to treatment for 28 days, then I go to an IOP, then I take these meds. But that is not how we find recovery. Maybe you'll find some short-term gains, but without connection, without community, it is impossible to find long-term recovery. Have you seen the meme where there's two stick figures, where one person has this darkness in them that maybe represents sadness and another person has light? And this cool meme shows the person with the light coming alongside, and they take a little of their darkness away. Have you seen that meme? Well, I actually don't particularly care for it, because I think what often happens is when we're in that one-to-one space, that person who comes alongside takes some of that darkness, yes, gives some of their light, but then maybe finds some darkness on their own, and there's just not enough light. Maybe as a family member, you've seen this, right? You've felt that, give and give and give your light and try to give your love, but one-on-one, it's not enough. So I imagine that meme, instead of a one-on-one, being a bunch of stick figures coming around that person with that darkness, with that sadness, with that addiction, with that life that's full of despair. And them coming together around that person, arm in arm, multiplies their individual light. Then they have enough light to give to that person so that nobody has to feel that despair anymore. That's the power of connection. That's the power of community. Notice there are no check boxes. There's no doing in there. There's just coming together, making community, making connection. Often I find that people in treatment, what they would do, they wouldn't even go to a person with light. They would go to another person that was feeling just as down as them. And so instead of the light multiplying, the darkness would multiply. That's what I think Johann is saying is happening in our communities now. We're so isolated and so separate, and the only place we find connection is with people who are as sad or as upset as we are. We need to bring each other together and surround one another to multiply that light. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is all well and good, Dr. Cynthia, but what can I do? What can I do? Maybe there is something to do. Maybe somebody needs to be given information about treatment or given a ride to treatment, shown where to find Revive Recovery, who you're going to hear about from a little later tonight. But I'm here to remind you today that doing is not enough. It might get the process started. It might bring us to short term, but really it's about the being and the connection, much more than it is of making a list of what to do. So what do? You support. You walk alongside. You listen. You have empathy. You find support for yourself, so you're not the only person trying to come alongside. Maybe it's treatment for family members. Maybe it's the recovery community. Maybe it's Al-Anon or a family-to-family program. You don't fall into the checkbox trap. You don't think to yourself, if only I could get them here, if only I could do that, if only, if only, if only. There is no if only. What you do is you start with the messiness of love. We ask ourselves, how might we create a caring community? How might I show support? How might I show that I care? If you yourself are the person that's struggling and feeling like that person in the meme that has darkness within inside them, don't isolate. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people. You matter. We see you. We've been there. We care. We're all in this together, and if we come together, we can walk with one another in that messiness of love, in that messiness of relationship. That's how we get through this, not with a recipe and check boxes. That's what I once thought would get me to where I needed to be in life. And as soon as I let go of that, the blessings began to flow, because it is all about collaboration and relationship and where we're going next. So tonight, how might we make this not only about the doing of the lighting of candles, about the doing of saying, here we are, let's remember and read some names. Let's also make tonight about being loving, being encouraging, being supporting, speaking life and hope to one another, finding the connection with those that are here with us in memory of those that we've lost. Thank you.
We're truly grateful to Cynthia for sharing her loving kindness and her compassionate heart with us here tonight. It was such a moving speech. Piers Kanuka is a teacher and a recovery activist who's been utilizing spiritual, psychological, and wellness practices to help those suffering from addiction for the past 25 years. He recently founded Resistance Recovery, a digital community reimagining addiction and recovery in the 21st century. We're thrilled to have Piers share his important message for the 10,000 Candles audience tonight.
Hey everybody, my name is Piers Kanuka. I'm the founder of Resistance Recovery, and I am deeply honored to be asked to speak on behalf of 10,000 Candles. I think 10,000 Candles is doing really significant work. I also think that it's but one very good example of a paradigm shift that's happening right now in the world of addiction and recovery. To put it very bluntly, we are now learning that the opposite of addiction is not abstinence, but connection. And 10,000 Candles is all about connection. So it's about bringing us up together to celebrate the lives of the people we've lost. It gives us a forum to grieve. It means that our loved ones, their lives were not for nothing. And it gives us a sense of our own power, our own unity moving forward. And perhaps one of the greatest things about it is it's organic. So it's rising up from the people. It's not funded by a government agency. It's not a creature of insurance. It is the people stepping forward, taking initiative on their own. And this kind of thing is happening all over. So when I say that 10,000 Candles is but an example of the paradigm shift that's happening, I really mean that. So if you look at things like White Bison, a Native American movement that contextualizes the 12 steps for that group, or if you go, as I do, in the Maine State Prison and see the power of refuge recovery, of inmates using the Dharma to help themselves get better. Or if you track the work of many prominent people like Judith Herman or Gabor Mate, you start seeing that we're getting an increasingly sophisticated and sensitive understanding of the role trauma plays in addiction. And basically what we're learning is that addiction arises out of the destruction of community. And over the last 30 years, but certainly much longer than that, we've watched a continual erosion of the social fabric. And this means that things that normally held us together, like the church and the school and the synagogue and the after-school programs, these things are either disappearing or they're failing in their mission to bring us together. So the great news about this is we understand that if we build community consciously and deliberately, we will have the best prevention program imaginable. And that means we don't have to spend time with cautionary tales, just say no, brains in frying pans, and this sort of thing. Instead, we have to just start spending time with each other, deliberately spending time. So in this age of COVID, this has become very, very evident that when we can't spend time with each other face to face, it puts incredible pressure on the community, but especially on people in recovery. And what I've seen is that in these few areas where people can still meet face to face, and I'm thinking specifically of my own experience with two very, very good sober houses in Portland, the Grace House and the Alethea House, both for women, we can see that the time together, the time spent face to face, people are really recognizing the value of that, the power of that, the power of going off with 2 or 3 people for a walk in the woods. And we can let this time be instrumental in us understanding that connection has everything to do with being together, has everything to do with conversation. At the heart of recovery is just conversation. That's all we're doing, is we're swapping stories, we're sharing our experience. And when those stories are safe and secure, and people can speak authentically and they feel really, really listened, they're changed. It's entirely possible to sit down with an AA sponsor and to leave that meeting changed forever. You will never look at your life the same way. But this applies to all of us. And so I'm imploring you in the name of 10,000 Candles, if you are not an addict, but you are interested in this cause, or you have been hurt by addiction, make contact with us. Come to us, share your experience with us. Let us learn about what you've experienced, what you can tell us about what it's like to love an addict. And this applies for nurses and emergency room personnel, EMTs, and law enforcement. We all come together, we can beat this thing. We know we can. So it's a false binary to say that recovery is either about treatment or about law enforcement or incarceration. Both of those things are top down. They come from the government. Unfortunately, in both cases, they can be money-making ventures. And they're excluding the third thing, which is the most important thing, and that is community. We can beat this thing by coming together, by sharing information, by engaging in spiritual practices, by sharing our truth with non-addicts, by doing research. This is the only way we're going to beat this thing. That excluded middle community, the thing that doesn't get the funding from the government, that is not paid for by insurance companies, that must become the most powerful thing. There is a place for recovery. And unfortunately, there is a place for incarceration. But the thing that will defeat this thing is you, and me, and all of us coming together on a united front, sharing our experience. Recovery. We're not just recovering from addiction, we're recovering from communities that have been basically destroyed through the predations of Big Pharma, through the offshoring of jobs, through a kind of hopelessness that is set in and despair. So during COVID, I decided to start something called resistance recovery. And what we do is we're a digital platform. We have a Facebook closed group, just write me and I'll let you in. We have resistancerecovery.com. We also have a YouTube channel where we have discussions with a variety of folks talking about topics that either directly or indirectly impact the cause of recovery. And the idea of this community is to come together and share ideas, to discuss things that are unfortunately somewhat taboo in recovery circles. And those are things like the prison industrial complex, Big Pharma, trauma, various spiritual traditions, And we come together and we share information, we engage in dialogue, we form new connections. We come together at other venues like the Alcyon Center up in Maine, which is a place of spiritual retreat where people in recovery and also people not in recovery have been coming together for a decade now. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring these different groups and organizations together under the digital umbrella of resistance recovery to further the cause. And the cause being the creation of community. So in closing, I want to thank you again for inviting me to speak to this very, very important event, and that we must remember our dead, we must grieve our dead, we must not forget our dead. Their lives were not in vain, and we must be there to provide solace and comfort for one another as we move forward. It's getting darker. It's probably going to get darker still. But despite that, we are beginning to see the rays of light shining through. And if we do our work now, maybe our grandchildren will not have to contend with something like an opioid epidemic. So thank you. It's a great honor. Namaste.
We're excited to have the opportunity to collaborate with peers in the resistance recovery community and want to thank him once again for his contribution to this year's event. Backed by popular demand, we're excited to bring to the stage a hip-hop artist named Etheric and B Snare to perform a song telling the story of the artist's own battle with addiction and how he was able to find a little bit of freedom. 10,000 Candles proudly presents Etheric and B Snare.
I should not be here. I should be locked up, serving a sentence for multiple years. I should be insane, repeating the same mistakes over and over and over. Miserable, addicted, and hungover. I should be dead and buried. I should be ashes in the wind. I should be gone from this world, like so many of my friends. But here I stand, alive and well, as a recovered man, with a story to tell. Just one more story. I lost my connection to family and friends. I lost jobs, hobbies, brain cells, and self-respect. I almost lost my life. Well, I basically did. I was physically and mentally and spiritually sick. I was deep in the pain of my poisonous ways. I got caught in the grips of a treacherous game. Lost and alone in a dangerous state. Another dead man walking that no one could save. But like I said, I stand here today as a man in long-term recovery. So if the definition of recover is to obtain what one had lost, did I gain back what my addiction at once cost? Yes, I did, and much, much more. But I must stress one point and settle the score. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, it's something I had to work for. It took me 7 rehabs and 4 psych wards. I was broken, I was battered, I was bruised. I was in denial of a lifestyle to need to use. But I ain't going back, I found freedom. The old ways could mean death if I repeat them. But you can find the light faster than me when you shout at the black mass that devours your dreams. Maybe I won't know. Maybe I won't know. Maybe I'll never know. Will we ever know? The steps were already there, laid before my feet. All I did was walk up the stairs to a heaven waiting for me. I'm no hero, no guru, just some guy in the right place at the right time who knew and knows that it ain't no merit of mine. It was the grace of the divine. That unexplainable grace restored me to sanity. And because of that, I feel this new energy inside me that I never felt before. This passion for life, this reason for being, this purpose. Sometimes I feel guilty. Maybe I'm just sad. Maybe it's anger. When I see the drug-related deaths and people locked up, it makes me second guess. How do we get caught in this mess? How do we get stuck in this mess? And why can't they get what I got? And why can't they find what I found? And where did that hope get all lost? And how can we turn this around? Maybe I won't know. Maybe I won't know. Maybe I'll never know. Will we ever know? And I don't know. Somebody tell me. You tell me why. Somebody tell me. Picking apart the pieces of the people I see. These opiates cloaking kids from their true ID. The IVs turning hometown heroes to fiends. And I seen a whole scene straight struggling to breathe. Fentanyl, it should fall faster than you can speak. I seen it all, people that crawl on their hands and knees for a fix that they think that they actually need. They will sell their own bodies for the tiniest piece. They will steal from their mothers, stick them up with the means. They'll beat you to your bloody ticket what they need. And I seen people doing this for good families. So don't sit there and tell me that it's not a disease. Arguments over words is a lot of nonsense. When the people arguing ain't even been where I've been. When we argue, we avoid what the real problem is. All these words don't gotta cause all this conflict. Substance use disorder or SUD is terminology that's identifiably me. I also got no problem with saying to peeps that I'm a person in long-term recovery. But I use the word addict because it reminds me if I ever use it again, I know where I'll be. I use the word disease, but it don't define me. When I live in the solution, I'm happy, joyous, and free. And I won't fall. Somebody's got me. You tell me why. Somebody tell me. Tell me why. Tell me why. Alright. The antics of arguing these semantics is causing a lot of damage. I think I know what the answer is. Surrender to the moment, admit that you're powerless, and then relinquish all opponents with this is no cowardice. The bravest of components begin in your vital quests. Believing in a power that's bigger than your own head. Believing in relying on totally different. Intellectual acceptance, not surrendering. The next part of the 12 is delve inside of yourself and to say the hell with the cells and no longer help with your health. Sharing that is scary but very extraordinary when you recognize the secrets are actually ordinary. Willingness to grow with improvement upon your person is the quality control that I urge you to keep on learning. When achieving amends, apology is insufficient. It's the altering of action that really will make the difference. Continue on the path and then cultivate your connection to the conscious understanding of higher power conception. Embodiment of principles pertinent to the purpose of uplifting other people must percolate through your person. When will you change what you thought you knew? How can we change what it made us do? What it put us through. Now go help another human, cause their pain you can lessen. Switch your selfishness into selflessness and go carry a message. You finish with this process and you will rise from the ashes like phoenixes. If you get through the nonsense, you'll fully embrace what freedom is. Now I know it's a lot of work, but let me ask you one question. How much is your life worth? Think about it. It ain't just the opiates causing the breach. Alcohol is a poison you don't find in the streets. It's turning cars into weapons every day of the week. And now death by cirrhosis every year is increased. Adderall is illegal from prescribed speed. Like Ritalin given to kids too hard to teach. I was told daily to make 80 mgs. So trust me, there was nothing in that pill I need. Let's do some analogies. Crystal meth is to Adderall is cocaine to Ritalin. Valium to alcohol is oxy to heroin. You don't believe me? Go look online. Check the chemical structure against the other end, you'll find that you're really similar, and it's really kind of crazy that we're giving this to kids without knowing this information. In 1906, they prescribed heroin to patients, and we call it a street drug and say junkies take it. Oxy's the same thing, it's time that we face it, because we're getting really sneaky with these bottles and labels. No matter where you stand or what you believe, we all affected, even if you're saying it's not me. The collective is connected on a level unseen, and we're closer to addiction than we even can see. Food addiction, porn addiction, codependency can be deadly as the drugs when used excessively. Lack of love, connection, and of empathy is at the root of all addictions tend to see. No, I ain't saying everybody needs to be like me and stay drug-free and 100% clean. There's a gray area with everything that I speak, and we almost choose what we believe. When will you change what you thought you knew? How can we change what it made us do? What it put us through. This sickness is spiritual in nature. It's widespread and prevalent in our culture. The cure for this sickness is recovery, which comes in many forms. The pathways that I took and continue to take to sustain my recovery are practicing spiritual principles, meditating daily, continuing to heal my trauma, connecting with amazing people, and having purpose and passion in my life. Find your path. Our global community needs to start working together. That's what community means. Spiritual, medical, political, psychiatric, religious, educational, etc., etc. All these groups have their own language and ideas on how to fix this problem. And all these groups need to stop with that intellectual and ideological warfare that keeps us disconnected from our hearts and start working together to cure the affliction that's tearing our communities apart. And let fellowship surround when you're feeling down. Let somebody help you out. Don't drift away and drown. Thank you.
Wow, just an incredible performance. I get chills every time I hear that song. Thank you so much, Etheric and B-Snare, for being here to share your gift with us tonight. This next story is from a woman that has been to the brink. Hers is a story of personal triumph over her addiction, grief, loss, and her rise to success through her service to others. She is currently the project director at Harbor Care, managing the state contract for 17 New Hampshire recovery community organizations. We're pleased to share Cheryl Pacapelli's story with you now.
Okay, so my name is Cheryl Pacapelli. I am a person in long-term recovery for 32 years, and I got into recovery on June 29th, 1989. So I think I'm in my 32nd year. You know, it's a lot of math. And you know, what long-term recovery means to me is that I haven't had a drink or used any kind of a mood-altering substance in that amount of time. So I end up in this emergency room where, you know, they got an EKG on me and I'm sneaking a couple of lines of cocaine, you know, in the ER, just totally unbeknownst to me, like what's going on. And I end up, you know, they admit me. So this happened at 4 o'clock in the morning. By 7, I was in treatment. Now, if somebody had told me at 4 o'clock in the morning, call me back tomorrow, or call me back every day for the next week, or we might have a bed for you in 3 weeks, there is no way I would be sitting here today talking about my recovery story. Access to treatment has to be immediate. In 2005, my fiance, who had struggled with addiction his whole life, took his life by suicide. And you know, it was such a hard time to go through that. And I remember like sitting on the porch with the police there and just like thinking, you know, somebody just like take the pain away, you know. And I knew that drugs or alcohol could take that pain away. And I also knew that my life would end too. And I didn't want that to happen. And so I made it through that initial couple of hours with the police and the medical examiner and all that stuff. And by the time I got home, this was on December 10th, so it was right before the holidays. My house was filled with people from my 12-step program. And they just wrapped themselves around me and didn't let me go until I could walk by myself. So I don't remember a whole lot about that time. I remember sitting in one spot on the couch with a blanket around me and 30 or 40 people in my house, and they're eating and putting up a Christmas tree and, you know, cooking food. Like, it was like I was watching a movie going on at my house. And, you know, they all supported me through the whole funeral, and I got through that without using a drink or a drug. And then after Dave died, my son started using heroin and became an intravenous drug user. And so I spent every day thinking like he wasn't gonna live. And I would bring him to treatment. So now I was, you know, I had my own recovery to worry about. I had this loss I was trying to process, and I had my only child that I was thinking I was gonna die every day. And you know, I would bring him to treatment. When he would call, I would bring him to cop drugs, just like every mother talks about, you know, even though I knew from my own program, like, I shouldn't be doing that, but I did it. And then eventually, my son called me from treatment, and I was like, oh my God, how did you get there? And he said, Ma, like, really? I know how to get there. Like, I was just using you to get $20 every time I called you. And I'm like, all right, you know, that's whatever, just stay. Can you stay? And he's like, yeah, I'm staying. And today, I have to say, today my son is in recovery. He now has a master's degree from George Washington University for public health. He lives on a river like this in New Jersey with his wife and 2 children, and is learning how to surf, you know, and has an absolutely blessed life, and I am just the proudest mother. Today, I work as the project director at Harbor Care, overseeing the contracts for all the recovery centers in New Hampshire. And there's 17 of them today. So I am like totally blessed when you hear where I came from 32 years ago to be doing like my dream job.
Amazing and powerful work that Cheryl and the recovery community organizations in New Hampshire are doing. We are honored to have met and worked with so many of the fine people that dedicate their time, energy, and passion to helping others on their recovery journey. 2 of those individuals have made a significant impact on our own journey through their tireless dedication to service and their contributions to 10,000 Candles and the stories of Recoverydia. From Revive Recovery Resource Center, Jessica Parnell and Natasha Smith.
Thank you, Recoverydia, for inviting us back again this year to participate in 10,000 Candles, an event in remembrance of the lives lost to despair from substance use disorders and other mental health conditions. At Revive Recovery Center, we stand united with all those lives impacted by substance use and mental health. We are excited to be hosting this event from the town in which we have recently expanded to in Derry, New Hampshire. Revive is one of 16 recovery community organizations across the state that provides life-saving peer recovery support services, where we are people walking through our own front doors feel welcomed no matter what stage of recovery they're in. At Revive, we have found that the basic building block to sustaining long-term recovery is through human connection. A connection to a personal plan of recovery that welcomes all pathways to recovery, and a greater connection to the community as a whole. Our goal is to create a community where people are welcomed, seen, and valued, where people understand that life is about progress, not perfection, where people can see your potential even if you don't see it for yourself. That is what Revive provides to everyone that walks through its front doors, the belief that they are worth a second chance and that we are here to walk that path with them. They are not alone. An entire community is with them. It's places like Revive where we meet people where they're at and help people believe that recovery is possible for them, that they deserve recovery. Recovery has afforded me a new life with this great job, a great family, and this great community. I want to make that available to every person that walks through our front doors. Our goal is not just to create an isolated recovery community, but to create a culture of recovery within the community at large. We have been mobilizing our recovery community to combat stigma and help people understand that recovery is truly possible. 2.5 years ago, this young woman that I share this stage with today, Natasha, walked through our front doors. She was broken and had lost all sense of who she was. We brought her in and welcomed her into our family. She rewrote her story, a story she now passes on to others like herself who are still suffering from substance use disorder. She is living proof that recovery is possible. It is possible for us to connect with others like ourselves in a place that is safe for us to do so.
I'm Natasha Smith. I am a CRSW at Revive Recovery Resource Center in Nashua. And I'm also very proud to say I'm a woman in long-term recovery. For years, I struggled with my mental illness and my substance use disorder. From being in and out of group homes, detention centers, to being in and out of jail and in and out of rehabs, I was lost. I was broken, like Jess had mentioned. I felt like nobody understood me. I felt like all people did was judge me and push me away. But I also remember walking into Revive, and they welcomed me with open arms. They believed in me, which allowed me to believe in myself. I found purpose through that connection. I found my passion, and through my passion, I took my pain and my struggles that I have overcome and turned it into my passion. And now I serve people because it is my passion to show people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Because as Jess just mentioned, I am living proof that there is light at the end of that tunnel. And at Revive, I love the fact that our biggest thing is connection. We believe that connection is the opposite of addiction. We believe that together we can, and alone we can't. We recover as one.
They do incredible work at Revive, and we are so thankful to have their support and involvement in 10,000 Candles. When a near-fatal illness led doctors to prescribe Timothy McMahon King narcotics, he ended up, as millions of others have, addicted. He eventually learned to manage pain without opioids, and he shares his story and the lessons he learned as a means to help others. We're pleased to present author of the book Addiction Nation, What the Opioid Crisis Reveals About Us, Timothy McMahon King.
It was Sunday morning, Easter morning, just a few months ago. And I stepped out the front door just to take the trash out. And walked back alley, threw away the trash. There weren't a lot of people on the streets that morning, but on my way back to that front door, I saw a small group of people. And in the middle was a man they were trying to hold up as he stumbled and fell. And it took me a few moments, but I realized what was happening. And I ran across the street and I said, I don't care about anything else. Just let me know, do you have Narcan? And a woman broke off. She walked over to me and she said, I hope he's okay. I don't know if he'll be okay. But he got desperate and he bought from somebody he didn't know. And I don't want him to die, but please don't call the cops yet. And so I walked back to my home. And I walked over to the drawer where we keep the Narcan. And I opened up the shade and I looked out and I could see him there propped up on a park bench with his head leaning down onto his chest and his friends desperately trying to keep him upright. And there are moments in our lives where lines that normally keep things separated start to feel blurred. The line between someone who is housed and someone who is unhoused, someone who's using and someone who's in sobriety, between being fallen and being redeemed, between sinner and saint, and between life and death in that place somewhere in between. And as I looked at him and I saw his head still down on his chest, I thought, that could have been me. It was just 10 years before I had been in the hospital, and I would have been on heavy doses of narcotics. And I don't remember the exact moment when the medicine that I needed to stay alive became a poison that was slowly killing me, but I felt powerless to stop. But I can remember those moments with my own head hung down on my chest with a bottle of pills and a box of fentanyl patches right at the bedside, not being sure if I could ever stop. And so I wondered about his story. What had brought him here? Had he been a construction worker who got injured on the job? And when he took those pills home, he found that they not only helped with the pain in his knees or his back, but helped ease the anxiety, even if it was just for a moment, about whether or not he'd be able to pay his bills or ever go back to work. Or maybe he'd played sports in high school, and when injury after injury turned into surgery, went home with Percocet, got used to that warm feeling, helping after surgery, but also easing for just a moment a sense of loneliness or anxiety. Or maybe there had been some kind of trauma. Maybe there had been some kind of abuse. Maybe there had been some sort of undiagnosed mental illness. And while the pain medicine didn't make it go away, didn't heal anything, it could at least make it feel better for a moment. And I realized at that moment too, that no matter what his story, no matter what brought him to that point that day, my reaction would be the same. And I stood there in my vigil by the window with that Narcan in my hand as a prayer, as a promise, as a possible miracle if things went wrong. And I knew at a moment's notice I would run out and do whatever I could to make sure that we had life and not death. And that is hard to see. Hard to see because that story is not the only one. And one becomes hundreds and thousands and then tens of thousands. And I knew that if things went wrong that morning, his death would be labeled an accidental overdose death. But when we talk about accidents, what we normally think of are things that are unexpected, unplanned, things that could not be foreseen. And when there's a car accident, we do often ask, who's at fault? Who could have prevented this tragedy? But there's something that happens when a car malfunctions the same way over and over and over again, causing an accident. When accidents keep happening on that same stretch of road or at that same intersection, we stop asking what's going on with the drivers, what's wrong with the drivers. We start asking what's wrong with the car. What's wrong with that stretch of road? What's wrong with that intersection? What's wrong with the system? We stop asking what's going on with the individual, and we say maybe there's something larger at work here. And we stop using the term accident, and we start to say maybe there's some negligence. Maybe there are people who know that we could change things so that we would all be safer, but they haven't. And that's where, when we know year after year, we're seeing 68,000, 70,000, 72,000 overdoses, I don't think we can use the term accident anymore. I think we need to start saying maybe there's some negligence. And this is not negligence where we're blaming the people who are dying, the people who are using drugs, but we have to ask maybe there's some negligence in our society, in our economy, in our politics, in our failure to build community and those connections that we've talked about so much tonight. Maybe there's negligence because we know we need more funding for treatment. We know people need to get there immediately, and far too often they're waiting. We know they need high quality treatment, and too often we still aren't holding ourselves to the highest standards of what works. We know that if a person is sent to prison, they are more likely to keep using. And we know that one of the most vulnerable populations to an overdose are the people who are just returning from incarceration. We know all of these things. And I'm not saying that this crisis is going to be an easy fix or that it's simple, but there is so much that we know that can help that we still aren't doing. We need to ask ourselves if it's still right to call all of these deaths an accident, or if we start needing to call it negligence. There's a story a lot of you probably know. I don't think I'm telling you anything new, that when miners used to go down and dig deep into the earth, they were in danger of being exposed to toxic gases. And the problem with those gases is that once they were exposed and once they could feel the effects, it was often too late. They were already gone. And so they started to bring down small birds, little canaries in cages. And those canaries, when they would bring them down, had such sensitive systems that they would be the first to know that something wasn't right. And so if that canary stopped singing, if that canary fell to the bottom of the cage, they didn't ask what's wrong with the canary. They knew it was a warning sign for all of them, that there was something toxic in the environment that was about to threaten everyone's life and well-being. And friends, I think we need to ask the question, if those who are in recovery, those who have struggled with addiction, those who are struggling with mental illness, really are just the canaries in the coal mines, the ones who are the first to know that something isn't right in the environment around them, that something is wrong, not just for them, that something is wrong, not just in their lives, but something is wrong for all of us. And this is where I believe that those in recovery, those who are close to them, can be the prophets our communities need today, because they are the ones who are seeing what is wrong first. They are feeling it in their hearts and their souls and their lives. We feel it deeply, and because we feel it, we can be a warning to others. We can let others know that we're headed in the wrong direction and that something needs to change. And this is where I looked out the window, and after about an hour, with the help of his friends, I saw that man start to get up, still wobbly, still not doing well, but walking and alive. And there I ended my vigil by the window with that Narcan in my hand as a prayer, as a gift that that morning I didn't need to give. And for anyone who's had this kind of struggle, I'm not going to say that your pain is a gift, but we know so many here tonight can testify that over time, with healing, with support, that pain can become purpose, that struggle can have meaning, and that lives can be transformed. And so each of us, I hope, that we can open up the shades in our windows, take a look out and see how our friends and neighbors are doing, and know that the struggle that we have had in our life with work, with dedication, can become a gift that we can hold in our hands and run out to others who might need it. Because that gift is not just for ourselves, not just in our own lives, but that gift is a gift that moves death to life. And that is one gift of resurrection, that no matter how many times we give it away, it always grows in strength and in power and blessing for others who truly need it. Thank you.
Wow. We are so grateful to Tim for joining us tonight and sharing his courageous journey and truly important message. His book, Addiction Nation, is available to order on Amazon. Well, now I'm joined by Doug Farrell from Decatur Creek, singer-songwriter Doug Farrell.
Amen.
Come on over, Doug. How are you tonight?
I'm great.
Are you enjoying yourself? Are you having a nice time?
I am having a blast.
It's great.
Speaking for myself and the whole band, all
Yeah.
three of us, we're having a great time.
You guys are fantastic.
It's an honor to be.
You played a song, Namaste, that really, really touched me, right in my heart. And I want to ask you, what's your inspiration for the music you write?
I guess a lot of it really does come from recovery. I'm a person also in long-term recovery. And I think upon awakening to your potential, I've heard of, once I heard a definition of God, that God is simply the unlimited potential of everything that ever was, everything that is, and everything that could be. And at one point I woke up through some recovery and woke up to being able to hear lyrics that were be able to transfer to a pen, to paper, to come up with something of meaning. And as a young kid, I was really into poetry. Very young, I wrote some good poems, and then it got into drugs, alcohol, and it disappeared.
Yeah.
Until it came back through recovery, and it's just a connection to something I don't understand. I think, and music is music is a connection.
Yeah.
And it's a fellowship of its own.
Universal tool, universal language.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of music, you had an interesting little encounter at some point with hearing yourself on the radio. You're telling me the story. It was really funny.
Well, we've been getting some airplay on local radio stations, and even some in other states. But I was driving home, and I'd come into New Hampshire on a Sunday night, and I was listening to the folk show, and all of a sudden one of our songs came on. It was one I had written. And I was so excited. I called everybody I knew to try to tell them I was on the radio, but nobody was answering the phone. They were busy. So suddenly I was being pulled over. And the cop said, this was in Milford, the cop said, "So what's going on? You're driving a little fast." I said, "Well, the truth is I'm a songwriter, and one of my songs was just on the radio, and I guess I got a little excited and I was speeding." And he just, straight-faced said, "I'll be right back." And he took my license and my, registration.
Yeah.
And I watched him in the mirror, and he was walking towards his car. And I watched him just stop and do a 180 and come back to my car. And I'm looking at him, and he comes back and he says, that's just too far out there to be a lie, so I'm going to let you go.
You got off lucky.
So, saved by music.
That's right. Well, speaking of your music, Decatur Creek is about to perform for us again tonight. Doug, we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And the band.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, for the second time tonight, Decatur Creek.
Next song we're going to do is a traditional tune. Lots of different versions of it out there. It's called Wayfaring Stranger. Hope you like ours. Gotta pick my pocket for a pick.
I'm a poor wayfaring stranger while traveling through this world of woe. There's no sickness, toil, or danger. That bright world to which I go. I'm going there to see my mother. I'm going there, no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I know dark clouds will gather round me. I know my way is rough and steep, yet beauteous fields lie just before me, where God's redeemed His vigils keep. I'm going there to see my mother. She said she'll meet me when I come. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home.
Gonna do one more for you, a tune that Doug wrote, which we love. Hope you do too.
A lot of the songs I write tend to revolve around some aspect of recovery. This is one of those. It's called, oh, there's my mask. See, I have one. This being our last song, I just want to say again that we've been really honored to be a part of this, and everybody that's been up here speaking and playing has been awesome.
We look forward to seeing the whole thing later.
Yeah, this is such a great cause. There again, we tune because we care. Okay, I'm ready. I am older than I've ever been, younger than I'll ever be again. Sure as night will follow this dawn, I'll be older than the man who wrote this song. It's been hard to sell the price between heaven and hell. The place I heard about and the other, well, the other I know well. So what do you reckon you know now? You've been the horse, you've been the plow. It's a tick of a clock, it's a bird on the wing. Time is king. Time is king. Please pardon my appearance during my renovation. I've been hitting life a little hard, and I'm in need of restoration. Your body's dying, but your spirit is not. This is forever, have you forgot? Until I find out where the hope is, I'll be closed till further notice. So what do you reckon you know now? You've been the horse, you've been the plow. It's a tick of a clock, it's a bird on the wing. But time is king. Time is king.
Wow, what an incredible performance. And just a round of applause for Decatur Creek. We're so grateful to have them here tonight to provide this beautiful melody, the soundtrack for our evening. All of our musical performers tonight have just been incredible, and we're so thankful to have them to join us this evening. Our next speaker is a veteran, a father, a mental health activist, and a motivational speaker. He embodies the mission of reducing stigma by sharing his mental health recovery journey and a powerful message of connection. We are proud to present for his second year, Robbie Spencer Millward.
Thank you, Matt, for such a warm introduction. Before I get started, I'd like to say something on behalf of my community. A few hours ago, while preparing for today, we learned that we lost a friend of ours to the demons that we all struggle with. So Alex, we miss you, we love you, we're with your family. Please know that you're loved. So, as Matt said, my name is Robbie Millward, and I am, most importantly, a father. And being a father is what led me here today. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about my journey and how we arrived at me speaking for you. I grew up like most kids with a latchkey around my neck, going home after school to hang out with my friends and my brother, just like any other suburban neighborhood kid. What was a little bit different about me is my anxiety. Back then, all I knew it was worry. And I had a nickname of Worrywart as a kid. It's because I would constantly be worried about the smallest of things. There was enough gas in the car to get us home. Did I put my seatbelt on fast enough? Am I doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing? As I grew, and as I started learning more about my illness, I understood that that wasn't worry. I want a worrywart. Inside of me, I have 3 demons: anxiety, depression, and PTSD. It was that anxiety that drove that worry, that drove my mind to always race and ask questions. I always needed to know what everybody was saying, thinking they were talking about me. I would plant myself in places in my house when we'd have people over to strategically hear, concerned that they had a thought about me that was negative, so I could learn and hopefully change. That did not happen. Fast forward to 2000. I'm in the Air Force. I'm in Anchorage, Alaska, Elmendorf Air Force Base. Very, very far away, 4,500 miles from Milford, New Hampshire, where I grew up. Away from everybody I knew, away from my friends, my support. The internet just began, so communicating was very difficult. And that's where I had one of the hardest moments of my time, and I attempted on my life. And as horrible as that is to say, and as horrible as it feels to know the harm that I've caused others, that day changed my life, and effectively it changed the lives of those around me. When I got home after my honorable discharge, I wanted to talk, I wanted to share. I couldn't. I was too afraid of what people would think of the guy that wrestled for their school, the guy that's bartending for them right now, the guy whose little brother was in the high school right now. What would they think of him? So I didn't say a word. I half-heartedly threw myself into my recovery, sometimes take the medication that the Air Force doctors gave me, never talked about it with my own doctors back in New Hampshire. Then I just stopped. And that feeling, that anxious feeling we get crawling out of our skin. We can't stop moving. We can take a breath, but it is just not enough of a breath. So I started drinking because that drowned that for a moment. The next day, no, it was a lot worse. So much worse. That's how I managed my life until about 2011, 2012. And at that point, I'd had enough. I'm a career salesman, and I remember vividly sitting at my therapist's office with one laptop, a cell phone, and another cell phone right next to each other, half listening, half participating with Katie, and half trying to wait to see what I needed to do for work, how I can help serve, how I can sell something, how I can do my job. Because that's where I lived. That's who I was. I was that sales guy. I was Robbie the salesman. I wasn't Robbie the person. I wasn't Robbie the father, the son, the dad. I wasn't any of that. I was Robbie the salesperson. It's very important to hear that because that's what my life was dedicated to. It wasn't dedicated to becoming a better me. It wasn't dedicated to becoming a better father. It wasn't dedicated to becoming a better son or brother or friend. It was dedicated to making as much money as I could. And that is where I saw myself. That is where I saw the ugliness in my face when I looked in the mirror. So I saw the man that was not the child he used to be, where he would hug and love. He was angry, didn't sleep, he was on edge. Whatever it took to make that buck. Something happened and I don't know. Something cracked, something broke, something snapped. I ended up out of work for 9 months on a leave of absence. That was the first step. That 9-month leave of absence put it so much in perspective for me. It allowed me to take up photography where I could literally, pun intended, focus on one singular thing and not think about everything else that's in my head. Photography has allowed me to be able to stop in a moment, pause, Look and reflect at what I want to see. Focus in on it. Make sure I have the right light. Make sure there isn't a shadow there. And I take that picture, that instant snap, and I capture a portion of my life, a portion of others' lives. This is extremely important to me. Taking pictures, speaking, and being a father. My darkest moment was February 2018, and that's where the biggest crack in my foundation came from. I don't know what was going on, but I wasn't me. I was an angry man, which I am not. Zero patience, zero ability to even think about others. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't talk. The remote control could be right here, and I didn't even have the energy, the desire, the need, the want to pick it up and change the channel. 4 weeks I laid there. I thought I was going to die. I seriously and genuinely thought I was going to die. The amount of weight that I lost was disgusting. At the urging of my family, my outpatient program therapist, the director of my hospital, my psychiatrist, my sociologist, my girlfriend, my kids, I went into inpatient program again, something I hadn't done for 20 years. And this time I actually leaned in and I took my wrestling lineage and I put everything into it. Every day I'd wake up on a mission to get better, not just for me, but for you, for my family, to help, to show that it's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to feel like you're crashing. It's okay to cry. I decided to tell my friends right after I had that meeting with everybody. And I went to their house, and these are my two biggest champions. And I walked in, I saw Michaela, and she was crying. And I said, I did it. I made the choice. I'm going to get help. I need this help. Please tell me it's okay. Absolutely, Robbie, it is. Something was off. Something was amiss. Michaela, what's going on? Robbie, 10 hours ago, Jason took his life. My close friend, her husband, cracked. The very next day, I stepped into that hospital, and that's when I started my long, hard journey. And I took the hardest step possible. I asked for help. I admitted what's going on in me. Doing so has allowed me to be the example that I need my kids to see. My daughter struggles, and she's open about it, and I couldn't be more proud of her. Ava's got the strength that I wish I had at her age, the strength I wish I had now. She can talk openly. This is a normal conversation for her and her friends. 2.5 years ago when I met Matt and TJ, I said to them in the studio, my hope is before I die, this conversation will be human and normal so that my kids could feel comfortable having it. Ava does. I thought that April was the hardest April I'd ever see. 2020, hold my beer. January of 2020, we welcomed this beautiful little granddaughter of mine into our worlds. January 14th, Elizabeth Aubin was born. My granddaughter, my squish. This cruel world took her away from me on April 5th from SIDS. It broke. I'm still not fixed. I still have that light. I still see it. I know it's there. It's a little bit smaller, and there's days it flickers. But what I have learned, what I've taken from my past, is that I know no matter how terrible and how hurtful I am right now, I can get through this. And I'm proud to say it didn't take my support family. It didn't take my medical support team. It didn't take my friends saying, Robbie, you need to go in the hospital. I recognized at that time I needed to step back from work, and I took a leave of absence to do what I needed to do. And I was focused on me and help my family heal. A year ago, I couldn't have made that decision. I ended up in the hospital. Literally 12 months later, I did not end up in the hospital. I know my tools, and I had to reach deep into that bag this year, and I still am. Before I leave you tonight, before I give my thanks to everybody, I need to read to you a poem, and I can guarantee you I will cry. This is my poem to my granddaughter, and this is my poem to all of you. And as somebody that seeks therapy in ink and tattoos, I have this poem right here. Squish, Whoopi misses you, and he loves you more than you know. Let no sadness come to this heart. Let no trouble come to these arms. Let no conflict come to these eyes. Let my soul be filled with the blessing of joy and peace. It's been a tremendous honor to do this for the second year in a row. It's been a tremendous honor to be here with all these great people, beautiful musicians, beautiful words. Matt, TJ, thank you again for allowing me to share my voice and my story on your platform. If you are out there suffering and you are in crisis, please ask for help. I know it's hard, but that's the hardest step you will take. Know that you are loved because I love you, and you've heard that today. Thank you.
Wow, so touching. And we are so grateful to Robbie, and we are so grateful to all the speakers. We want to say thank you and express our deepest gratitude to all of our speakers tonight, to everyone who's attended 10,000 Candles 2020 live stream. We're so thankful. We're thankful to Events United for hosting us tonight and producing this event. Yeah, and so I want to present the next person in closing the evening with a remembrance and closing remarks from Pastor Aaron Goodrew, founder of Mercy Street, a community of souls affected by addiction. They meet in Plastow, New Hampshire, and we are thankful to have everyone joining. We'll hand the stage over to Pastor Aaron. Thank you.
We know that substance use disorder and mental illnesses do not discriminate. We know that people with blue collars, people with white collars, and people with no collars at all are equally share in the loss and tragedy of missing our loved ones. Our friends from Al-Anon remind us that our family members do not create addiction. They don't cause it. They can't control it, and they can't cure it. Together with that message, we know that ours is a job to simply walk alongside, to love as best we're able to. The portraits from the Angels of Addiction contain images of my friends, of Courtney, of Andrew, of Chris, of Natalie, just to name a few, with two questions in the face of tragic news. We ask ourselves, usually in the deepest, darkest hours of night when our heads are on pillows or should be on pillows, we ask ourselves, what if? And we ask ourselves a longing question of if only. And when we ask those questions, momentarily we find a little bit of relief, like an itch that's being scratched. Momentarily we find a little bit of relief from the internal sunburn of grief. And when that moment is past, we're left with the cold, dark reality that we miss someone that we have loved deeply. Grief may be in the form of death for us, as well as the form of the symptoms of substance use disorder. We know that people afflicted cross their own moral boundaries, that lead them into paths of perhaps lying and cheating and stealing and hurting the people that they love the dearest. We grieve others' actions, and we grieve what they want to be as well. To the parents, to the brothers and sisters and grandparents who miss loved ones deeply, your seasons of grief are indeed real. I've sat with many moms in my church office months, perhaps a year after the loss of their child, and they confess tearfully that they don't always have a desire to live, that they miss their loved one incredibly strongly. And while they're missing their loved ones, they don't know what to do next. And they think perhaps upon a painful impulse, ending their own lives might bring them some relief. And I usually reply with the most understanding tone that I can that their pain is real, that it seems overwhelming. But indeed, if they did act on that impulse, then addiction would claim yet another life. Grief is a form of suffering. And here's a pattern to cling to. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the early Roman church, says this. It's a bit of a puppy chasing its tail. He says that suffering leads to perseverance, and perseverance leads to character, and character leads to hope. And hope doesn't disappoint us because at the right time, God pours out his love for us. Pours it out for us. At our emptiest, God pours out his love for us. When we feel the most depleted, God still finds value in us to bring life back to us. We are still worthy of receiving God's love, even when we just are shells of ourselves. In our seasons of grief, we choose community over isolation. In our seasons of grief, we choose to speak our loved ones' names. And in our seasons of grief, with joy, we share their images. We choose to risk love by calling, by visiting, by embracing and receiving one another. Love is risky and it's messy, and yet everyone's worthy of it because we've all been created in God's image. You are loved. You're loved by our Creator, and you're loved by your community. I'll invite you to join with me in prayer. With respect for all of our faith traditions and coming from my American Baptist Church experience, shall we pray? Creator God, we thank you for life. We thank you for love. We thank you for our collective loved ones whom we miss terribly. We thank you for your forgiveness and the ability to forgive others. We thank you, God, that we're all works in progress. We ask that you'd guide us by your Spirit to embrace our gifts, to help us relieve suffering in others. Help us to choose connection over isolation. Give us ears to hear truth in others' stories. Give us wisdom to know when and how to share our own hearts. Help us to let go, God, of our fears. Help us to join our hopes and concerns about the future. And help us to connect with you. God, we choose to let tomorrow worry about itself. We thank you in your name. Amen.